I ultimately became I'm a veterinarian. I went to, I totally relate to everything you're saying about my undergraduate education. I can't imagine how I would have gotten through my graduate education without being taught to sit there and be bored and to muddle through a bunch of crap that I would care less about. Even in vet school, you have to learn stuff that just has nothing to do with what I do every day. But I don't see how I could be where I am now had I not been made to study the way that there's no Sudbury school for becoming a veterinarian.
I'll see if I can find a Sudbury Valley graduate who's a vet to tell you how they did it. Because, of course we can't see what we don't know. That's exactly the lesson of the Swiss. They didn't know digital. They only knew clocks. So that's, to them, the only way it was. But look where they are today. There is,
Yeah, I was just going to say too, I think part of it is, because it's what my husband was very reluctant to these ideas at first too, when I was first telling him, because he works in Wall Street, he's a trader, he's all very, things he had to learn. And as he's started to realize more and more, he's like, oh my gosh, like, if I had known this earlier, I knew math was my passion, like, I could have had a university degree earlier. I don't think even that we're saying, like, for later, like, so many of these kids decide most of them decide they want to take the SATs, go to college, study, and have no trouble transitioning into that. And I think if you have known, like, your passion was to be a vet, part of it is then once you get to that place that is your choice. It's the freedom to make that choice to then, okay, if this is where I want to be, I've got to learn this, this, and this. So we're not like, do you know what I'm saying? We're not saying kids aren't going to at some point go, a great example is some of the young kids at Spring Valley wanted to build like some rabbit cages and have rabbits. And they had to learn all the math and geometry to build their cages and stuff like that. And they're learning it so much faster. I think some of the statistics on math in the schools is like, kids are learning 4 years.
The research from Sudbury is that all of the math that we teach in elementary school can be learned, and has been over the last 40 years, learned by children in 20 hours once they really ask for a math class for their own reasons.
What about the structure?
It depends on what you're calling structure. This is the structure of the system. This is the structure of Sudbury, where all of the students are responsible every minute of every day to hold it themselves. There's awesome responsibility and awesome growth in doing that. Okay?
What about if the kid says, I'm just not interested in that? I don't want to do that. I'd rather go play my video game in the corner. I don't want healthy food. I want to eat candy. Or, if it were me, I knew I wanted to be a veterinarian, but in college I way preferred smoking marijuana and drinking beer, and that's what I did for 4 years. I had to go back, you don't think
you
some
might
kids
consider looking at the characteristics of the addictive system and the healthy system, because I do believe there's a connection between the way you were schooled and that happening. And you're probably lucky that you broke loose of it. I'll give you the sheet on the characteristics. This is from research. The characteristics of an addictive system are denial, fear, control, judgment, anger, repressed anger, approval seeking, low self-esteem, frozen feelings or disregard of feelings, codependency and caretaking, perfectionism and people-pleasing, rigid rules, out of balance, dishonesty, emotional dishonesty, over-responsibility, irresponsibility, difficulty with change, avoidance of conflict, and shame. That's the dysfunctional addictive system. Healthy systems, love, caring, sense of belonging, community, autonomy, growth, and change. They feel alive, acceptance, questioning, adapting, value feelings, accept and deal with conflict, safety, physical and emotional, boundaries where they're needed, non-judgmental, values mistakes as part of learning, honesty and emotional honesty, balanced and holistic, joy, happiness, and fun. You're welcome to a copy of this. You decide which system you grew up in. I'm not going to make the decision for you, but I can tell you, I show this to any group of kids. Which one is the school system? I've never had someone in a kid in school not say this. They get it like that. I worked in a prison as a psychotherapist for 3.5 years. I personally found it a healthier, happier environment. Personally, I enjoyed being there more than being in the average high school because I can't stand to see that all day long, walking down the halls, how unhappy the kids are. And, you know,
I think the root of your question comes from, one, if a child is in the system is labeled as somewhat.
excuse me one second, if you didn't put your email there, if you want to get information about meetings, just give us your email address before you leave. Thanks.
Do you want?
A different way of learning or needs attention in a different way. I mean, you're certainly talking about a nirvana of ways that we teach in Sudbury. Okay. The second part, I think, deals with how do you make the transition from the unstructured environment or the structure that you provide to a different structure that is, like it or not, is where we are. I mean, if we go on to higher education, that's, I don't know, I don't want to paraphrase anything that you said, but I think that's what I heard. There's two pieces to that.
And it's so interesting, because the college part, as a parent, is the one thing that totally freaked me out, probably from the day I had him, and I totally get where you're coming from. I saw almost everyone I know party their way through college. And I think, to me, you know, when I finally realized it's because all these kids don't have any freedom, and then they're given this awesome responsibility of complete freedom. I saw them all go crazy, like, and I was one of them too. It's like, you're in this rigid environment, and all of a sudden you're living on your own, you have everything. And so the kids who go through this are learning the responsibility younger, and they don't. And I'm saying this because I've seen it now with our family friends who've gone through it. This 12-year-old girl is just about the most amazing child who's gone through it since she was a baby. The self-esteem on that kid, I am telling you right now, she's got more self-confidence than I do, and more self-assured. She is this unbelievable young woman. And there's not a doubt in my mind she's not going to party her way through college like so many of us did, because she's had that freedom since the time she was little, and she's learned it, and what she's come to learn on her own and chosen to learn is unbelievable. Like, we have this idea that if you give kids freedom, they're not going to study anything, they're not going to learn anything. And it's like, you know, we've been so into the election the last few weeks. Somebody says, we're out the other day, and someone says something about the president. My little 18-month-old goes, oh, Barack Obama. And this person's like, what did he just say? Like, kids are natural. They do learn so much when they're given the freedom. And I think it is about trusting them when they're younger to have it sometimes. And it is a scary concept, I think.